the stories making the headlines at this hour. Israeli forces began their ground offensive in southern Gaza, with their tanks pushing into the area's main city. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the IDF should retain control after the war to demilitarize the region. China is seeing surging cases of mycoplasma pneumonia, with the Education Ministry advising sick teachers and students not to go to school. In South Korea, concerns are growing, prompting pharmaceutical firms to increase production. An OECD report shows that South Korean students are at the top level in terms of math, reading, and science proficiency, suggesting that the impact of COVID-19 was minimal compared to other countries. Good afternoon. Israeli forces began their ground offensive in southern Gaza, with their tanks pushing into the area's main city. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the IDF should retain control after the war to demilitarize the region. Lee Seung-jae with the latest.
The Israel Defense Forces on Tuesday reached southern Gaza's main city of Khan Younis, marking what they called the most intense day of combat in 5 weeks of ground operations against Hamas. Backed by warplanes and tanks, the IDF reached the heart of the city, where many Palestinians who fled since the start of the armed conflict are now situated. According to the chief of Israel's general staff, Israeli forces have secured many Hamas strongholds in the northern Gaza Strip and are now operating against the strongholds in the south. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stressed that the Israel Defense Forces should retain control of the region following the disarmament of Gaza and the end of the war, shooting down any notion that an international force could be responsible for security in the Gaza Strip.
I want to say a word about the day after Hamas. Gaza needs to be demilitarized. But in order for Gaza to be demilitarized, there's just one force that can demilitarize it, and that power is the IDF. No international force can be responsible for that. We saw in other places what happened when they brought in international forces to demilitarize them. I am not willing to close my eyes and accept any other arrangement.
Gaza's health ministry says the death toll among Palestinians since the start of the armed conflict has now surpassed 16,000, with some 40,000 others injured. With the dire situation in Gaza, the World Health Organization appealed for protection for the health system against further attacks. The UN Health Agency says with more civilians in southern Gaza receiving immediate evacuation orders and being forced to move, more people are being concentrated into smaller areas, while the remaining hospitals in those areas run without sufficient fuel, medicine, food, water, or protection from health workers. It added that the number of functioning hospitals in the Gaza Strip has dropped from 36 to 18, with some treating 2 to 3 times more patients than they were designed for. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
China is seeing surging cases of mycoplasma pneumonia, with the Education Ministry advising sick teachers and students not to go to school. In South Korea, concerns are growing, prompting pharmaceutical firms to increase production. Park Gun-woo has the details.
The recent spread of respiratory diseases in South Korea and globally has increased concerns domestically. The illnesses include both flu in South Korea and a recent surge of mycoplasma pneumonia, especially among children in China. In response, pharmaceutical companies have been increasing production of medicine, including fever reducers and antibiotics, to cope with the rising demand. According to one drug maker, production of antibiotics jumped 20% on year, while production of cough expectorants rose 15%. And those production figures are rising as the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency reported that around 46 out of 1,000 visitors to outpatient clinics had symptoms of flu during the 4th week of November, 7 times more than expected in a flu season. In China, the Education Ministry issued a notice on preventing and controlling winter epidemic diseases in schools, despite doctors in the country saying the disease is not new and comparatively mild, occurring roughly every 4 years. It has ordered students absent from school to be monitored, personal hygiene regimes to be strengthened, and also requested the stockpiling of masks. This is the first warning issued by the Chinese government related to the spread of respiratory diseases since its zero-COVID policy last year. Meanwhile, specialists say China's recent spike in respiratory illnesses is because it's the first full winter season since strict COVID-19 restrictions were lifted in December 2022. They also said resistance to antibiotics used to treat the disease in children may be one of the reasons for the increase. Elsewhere, officials in Denmark and France say mycoplasma pneumonia is now being considered an epidemic, despite the World Health Organization saying it is not a reportable disease to the WHO and appears to be in decline. Park Ko-nu, Arirang News.
An OECD report shows that South Korean students are at the top level in terms of math, reading, and science proficiency. The data suggests that the impact of COVID-19 was minimal compared to other countries. Yoon reports.
The COVID-19 pandemic was a stress test for education systems. Schools and students around the world had to adapt to sudden and profound changes in how learning was carried out, including lockdowns and extended school closures in many countries. The OECD Program for International Student Assessment, or PISA, has tested nearly 700,000 15-year-old students in 81 countries or economies on mathematics, reading, and science. Its results released on Tuesday showed South Korea ranked 6th in mathematics, 4th in reading, and 5th in science. The OECD PISA tests explore how well students can solve complex problems, think critically, and communicate effectively. This gives insights into how well education systems are preparing students for real-life challenges and future success. Korea participated for the first time in PISA in 2000. While results for 2022 showed an unprecedented average overall drop in performance across the OECD countries, 18 countries or economies remained above the average. For South Korea, the average 2022 results themselves were about the same as in 2018, when performance levels were actually at the second worst since it first participated in PISA in 2000. But compared to other public education systems, South Korea suffered minimal disruption to its academic levels throughout the COVID-19 pandemic period. The 2022 results for South Korea showed that by gender, boys and girls performed at similar levels on average in mathematics, but girls outperformed boys in reading and science. While the country's overall academic performance remains similar, the gap between the highest scoring students and the weakest students has widened, particularly for mathematics. If school buildings had to close again in the future, many students across the OECD responded that they felt confident about using digital technology for learning remotely. And some 70% of students in South Korea felt confident about using video communication programs. Yoon, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., fresh data on job openings shows that the labor market is cooling, as intended by central bank's rate hike campaign. The lower than expected figure was met with a mixed reaction from the financial markets. Our Moon Hye-ryun has the details.
Job openings in the United States dropped to the lowest level in more than 2 years, signaling a cooling labor market on the back of high interest rates. According to the U.S. Labor Department on Tuesday, the number of job openings fell to 8.7 million in October, a sharp drop from 9.3 million the month before. It's the lowest number of job openings since March 2021 and is also lower than the expected 9.4 million job openings projected by Dow Jones. This decline is significant as labor market conditions are considered by the Federal Reserve when forming their interest rate policies. Despite the Fed's aggressive rate hikes to ease inflation, the U.S. job market has been surprisingly resilient. This latest figure, however, suggests that higher interest rates are finally dampening demand for workers. It also falls in line with data released last week that showed consumer spending slowing in October. With this latest announcement, Wall Street had a mixed end to trading on Tuesday amid expectations that the Fed could start cutting interest rates soon, and the 10-year Treasury yield falling to its lowest level since September this year. The benchmark S&P 500 sector indexes and the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq gained 0.31%.
So I see a dichotomy as to what's going on in the market today between bonds being very bullish, yet it looks like, obviously, that stocks are a little bit more cautious about the outlook for their prospects going forward.
The financial markets have shown fluctuations throughout the past few months, with the S&P 500 index rising by over 10% in November from late October, amid hopes that the Federal Reserve has halted their rate hikes. It's widely expected that rates will stay unchanged at the Fed's FOMC meeting next week, but some stock markets investors are reportedly betting on rate cuts in March next year. More economic indicators are due to be released before the December interest policy is announced, such as the November jobs report. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
The chair of the Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission, Kim Hong-il, has been nominated for a new role of leading the Korea Communications Commission, the nation's main broadcasting watchdog. The announcement from the top office came on Wednesday, just 5 days after the former KCC chair, Lee Dong-kwan, resigned while facing an impeachment vote. The top office said the broadcast watchdog currently faces issues with conflicting interests from different parties, and Kim, a career prosecutor, is well known for his fairness and leadership. However, the hearing process is expected to be heated, with Kim's lack of media experience and the current division between the two main parties in media-related issues. Parliamentary approval is not required for the president to appoint the position. South Korea has unveiled a set of initiatives to change the way the country views and treats mental health. The goal is to cut the country's high suicide rate by half within a decade. Our Choi Soo-hyung explains.
With South Korea ranking first for suicide rates among the OECD countries last year, the Ministry of Health and Welfare has unveiled new initiatives that aim to better deal with mental health issues. President Yoon explains that the plan is all-encompassing.
특히 저출산 시대에 국민의 정신건강 문제를 해결해서 개인의 역량과 삶의 질을 높일 때 국가 성장을 견인해 나갈 수 있습니다. 정부는 이제 예방치료 회복에 이르기까지 전 과정의 지원 체계를 재설계해서 정신건강 정책의 패러다임을 획기적으로 바꿔 나갈 것입니다.
To improve old mental health policies which focused on after-the-fact treatment and not on prevention, the new approach is more proactive and highlights 4 key tasks. Firstly, the government aims to build a system that's integrated into daily life. This involves launching mobile mental health checkups via the messaging application KakaoTalk and integrating the suicide prevention emergency hotline under a brand new number 109. They also plan to increase counseling support for young people at universities and in workplaces. Secondly, there'll be swift and continuous treatment and management of severe patients. The government also will increase financial support for outpatients care by keeping in touch with those who have had severe mental health problems. As for the long-term strategy for people with severe mental health issues, there'll be better housing support for economically independent living. They will also be officially recognized as a socially vulnerable group, and more people will be eligible for medical insurance, even if they have a record of mental health issues. At the moment, some insurance companies don't offer cover to such people. Lastly, they will improve awareness of mental illnesses to dispel prejudice. Efforts will be made through nationwide campaigns and university club activities so that mental illnesses are seen in a similar way to physical ailments. The Minister of Health and Welfare Ministry Cho Kyu-hong says that with bold investments in mental health care, it will build a society where everyone can integrate.
The government will provide mental health care services to all nationals and residents whenever and wherever through these policies, and build a society where people with mental illnesses can integrate into society without problems.
Though a specific start date hasn't been revealed, though these 4 main strategies, the government plans to provide psychological counseling to 1 million people by 2027 and reduce the suicide rates by 50% within 10 years. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Amid delays in China's urea exports to South Korea, sources now suggest a curb in shipments next year. Beijing has reportedly expressed willingness to continue supply chain cooperation with Seoul. Our Song Yoo-jin reports.
On top of recent delays of urea imports destined for South Korea from China, there could also be a curb in shipments next year. According to China's Nitrogen Fertilizer Association on Tuesday, its biggest 15 urea-producing companies, including Sinochem and CNAMPGC, have agreed to cap their exports to 944,000 tons in 2024. The NFA stated that urea shipments from China will come to a halt until the first quarter of next year, leading to the possibility of a reduced supply to South Korean firms. Chinese media have also reported that urea exports have been temporarily suspended and that the supply will decrease significantly before Chinese New Year's Day. This comes following reports from Korean companies that there have been disruptions in their ordered urea supplies passing through Chinese customs, which was confirmed by the South Korean government. The chemical is used as fertilizer in farming and is a key fluid used to reduce emissions from diesel vehicles. More than 90% of urea used in South Korean diesel vehicles in October came from China, and between January and October alone this year, urea imports from China total nearly 3.4 million tons. Seoul's Trade Ministry consulted with Beijing over these delays and reported that they were the result of a tight domestic urea supply rather than having a political background. Chinese authorities reaffirmed this message by expressing their hope that supply chain cooperation between the two countries would continue smoothly, adding it would seek a solution to customs clearance issues. The two countries' trade authorities also held a joint committee meeting on Tuesday to speed up negotiations for the second phase of a free trade agreement. Urea prices hit a two-year high in China last month, and concerns have spiked over the possibility of a repeat of the 2021 supply shortage when China halted all urea exports. The South Korean government reassured domestic firms, saying that there was currently enough urea in stock to last around 3 months. They will also be seeking ways to diversify import channels. 송유진, Arirang News.
The 2023 Korea Industrial Technology R&D Expo, the nation's largest tech research and development exhibition, kicked off on Wednesday here in Seoul. The event, which will run until Friday, is organized by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy to showcase current and future technologies in Korea's industrial sector. And this year, it marks its 30th anniversary with the theme of celebrating 30 years of K-Tech, shaping the future of Korea beyond today. Wolverhampton Wanderers winger Hwang Hee-chan has been named man of the match after he scored his 8th Premier League goal of the season. The South Korean player scored the only goal of the game as Wolves secured a win against Burnley on Tuesday evening local time. He received over 83% of votes from fans to secure the award. With the latest goal, he is now in a three-way tie for 4th place for Premier League goals this season, just behind international teammate Son Heung-min.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. The Netherlands has announced that it will provide Kiev with $2.6 billion in assistance in 2024. The Dutch Foreign Minister Anke Bruins-Slot, on an official visit on Tuesday, told her Ukrainian counterpart that your fight is our fight, your security is our security. Amid recent concerns of diminishing Western support, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Kuleba said that he did not see any decrease in support coming from partners when it comes to deliveries of weapons and ammunition. Bruins-Slot also mentioned a Dutch pilot training center in Romania for F-16 fighter jets that opened in November, and that talks are being held with the US and Denmark to decide whether Ukraine can deploy the jets as soon as possible. The death toll from the eruption of the Mount Merapi volcano in Indonesia on Sunday has risen to 22 people. Rescuers found 9 more bodies on Tuesday after resuming their search, which had been suspended on Monday due to safety concerns. 1 person is still missing. There were 75 hikers in the area during the eruption, most of whom were evacuated, although many suffered from burns. Mount Merapi, which means Mountain of Fire, is around 3,000 meters high and is one of the most active of Indonesia's 127 volcanoes. The mountain on West Sumatra spewed a 3-kilometer ash cloud into the air when it erupted on Sunday, blanketing the surrounding region in ash. A Spanish prosecutor has requested a 4-year prison sentence on Tuesday for 4 football fans accused of racial hate crimes against Real Madrid winger Vinicius Jr. They are accused of hanging an inflatable black effigy dressed in a replica of Vinicius Jr.'s number 20 shirt off a bridge near Real Madrid's training ground, along with a banner reading "Madrid hates Real." The incident happened ahead of Real's match against local rival Atletico Madrid in January. The 4 defendants are members of far-right fan group Frente Atletico and have been accused of showing an unequivocal sign of contempt and repudiation of the victim's skin color and an attempt to undermine the victim's peace of mind. The prosecutor has also requested joint compensation of around $6,500 in moral damage caused to Vinicius Jr. An American tourist was killed in the Bahamas in a shark attack on Monday. The 44-year-old female was paddleboarding with a companion in waters near the resort in western New Providence Island, near the capital Nassau, when a shark attacked. A lifeguard came to the aid of the paddleboarders. However, the woman had suffered serious trauma to the right side of her body and later died. According to the program director of the International Shark Attack File, there have been a couple of shark-related deaths in the Bahamas in the past 5 years. On average, about 5 people a year die from shark attacks. Kim Si-young, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The chill is not the major issue today. It's the dust that we're covered by all day in most places. Southwesterly winds have brought more dust into the country, boosting dust levels to very bad levels in the latter half of the day. Another reason to keep a face mask on today. Then there will be light rain across Korea with less than 5 millimeters of precipitation expected. Mountainous regions in Gangwon-do province could see snow instead of rain. Meanwhile, a dry advisory remains in place for some of the East Coast and Busan and Ulsan. Afternoon highs are similar to slightly lower this afternoon, Seoul topping out at 10 degrees Celsius, but winter seems to be far away on Jeju Island, topping out at 19 degrees Celsius. Partly sunny skies are blurred by that fine dust. Today's precipitation will bring a slight chill tomorrow morning, but it won't be too bad. And there will not be a major cold snap for the next 5 days. Also, air quality should improve tomorrow. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Have you ever heard of rizz? It was chosen as the word of the year by the Oxford Dictionary. Widely used by Gen Z, it's defined as style, charm, or attractiveness. It's believed to have come from the word charisma from the middle rizz part, like how flu came from influenza. You can also use it as a verb, like to rizz up would mean to attract someone. The Oxford Dictionary says the word shows how Gen Z has come to have more impact on society, with their own rizz changing perspectives, lifestyle, and language. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.